Hey there, and welcome to The Lab, the series where we tap into the minds and strategies of top performing EXP agents to uncover what's really working out there today. What you're about to see isn't just a great conversation, it's a sneak peek of what's inside EXP University training. All of our major training programs like Fast Cap, the Lead Generation Series, Fast Attract, and more are built by conducting dozens and dozens of these interviews. Think cutting edge tactics, proven systems, and agent tested strategies compiled from multiple agents on a given topic, all building into insights shared in our training and right here. Consider this your front row seat, and let's dive in. For those not familiar with you, do you want to give a brief introduction of you and your pathway to where you are today?
Yeah, how far back do we go, Brian?
Start with getting into real estate. Where'd you come from
Yeah.
before real estate?
I always sort of say I grew up in real estate, but my life before that, I got lucky and found what I loved early. I started when I was 22, but immediately before that, I got by a stroke of luck when I was really young. When I was in college, I got to be a sideline reporter for the NFL, which, by the way, is the best training that anybody could ever go through. Like, I wish that everybody got to go through the training that I got to go through doing that for a number of different reasons. But it was the coolest job that I knew I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. A really cool experience that I knew I didn't want to do forever. And so I got to be a sideline reporter for an NFL team for 3 seasons, and then decided I didn't want to do it forever. So I went to the library one day. I always have such a vivid memory when I tell this story, Brian. I went to the library one day and I was very clear. As a sideline reporter, the job sounds really cool, but you also don't make any money. Like, you're making basically below minimum wage when you factor in the travel and when you're early in the game, when you're doing all your own hair and makeup and clothes and all of those things. And so I said, no, I don't love it enough to do that for nothing effectually. So I said, well, what do I actually want to do in my life? And I said, I want to be in control of my own destiny. That's really what it was. And when I looked up, I thought to myself, well, what does that actually mean? And when you're young, part of that means making enough money to have the freedom to be able to do that. So I said, okay, I want to build wealth. And so I went to the library one day and I pulled down a bunch of biographies of a bunch of people who had built a lot of wealth. And guess what? The one thing that they all had in common was, Brian?
Real estate.
Real
Yes.
estate. And so I thought, I can do that. And so I double majored. I was majoring in communications. I ended up double majoring in that and finance. And right out of school, I went to work as an underwriter for a real estate investment and development firm. That's where I started in my career.
Okay.
And at the time, I graduated college early, so I was about 20 years old. So I was the youngest person on my team by far, and it was a small firm, which was exciting because I got to be exposed to a lot of different things. And the entire way that you make money in development is is really by becoming a partner. And so I had the big ambition that even at this young age that I was at, that I was going to become a partner within a year. And so I was, no exaggeration, working 100-hour weeks and showing up for every meeting at all hours of the day, exposing myself to every project, every experience, underwriting every deal that came through, whether it was mine to underwrite or not, just so I could learn enough. And on day 366 of being at this company, I got my goal. They offered me partnership. And I came
Wow.
home that night, and I was dating, at the time, my now husband. And I got home that night, and he said, I have really big, exciting news. And I was like, me too, you go first. And he says, I just found out I got a huge promotion, and I'm moving to Northern California. And I lived in Southern California at the time. And I was like, I just got really big news that I got offered partnership. And we just both sort of looked at each other and thought, well, what are we going to do? We knew that we wanted to stay together. And it was basically, hey, you go this route or I go that route. And so I decided that we decided together we were going to move to Northern California. So my heart broke a little because I had worked so hard for this and had to come in the next day and say, I'm not going to be able to say yes to this big goal that I had, and I'm going to move over here. And when I got to Northern California, I said, well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do now? I knew I loved real estate. I knew I wanted to control my own destiny. I really didn't want to start in development again. And so I thought, well, I want to invest in real estate. What's the best way to get to know a market? I guess I'll get into real estate sales. And that's what I did. And so I started at the ripe age of 22 in a brand new city where I didn't know anybody, and obviously a business where I didn't know much of anything. And like I said, just got really lucky, Brian, that I found what I loved early. But it wasn't an easy go for me in a very high price point area as a young person with no contacts. And candidly, when I started, a lot of people didn't expect much of me because they all didn't think that somebody who didn't have any contacts like I did, or was my age, would be able to break into a market. And I didn't have a Cinderella story. I was not rookie of the year. I did not come out of the gates and kill it. But what I did do was is I worked really hard. I was always willing to do the work. It's been a theme that's followed me through my career, Brian. And when you are willing to do the work, you also learn a lot along the way if you're smart. And so I did the work. That year, I door knocked 356 days out of 365. I literally only sold one transaction my first year in real estate, but I door knocked almost every single day. And guess what happened in my second year? Well, I became very successful. I was the number one individual agent in the office. And then everybody started to tell me that the next thing I needed to do was to build a team. And I remember at the time, Brian, thinking to myself, I really don't want to do that. Like, I'm 23 years old. I'm barely responsible for myself. I really don't feel like I should be responsible for anybody else. And I didn't love the idea of taking on a bunch of overhead and being responsible for other people. And so I remember talking to my manager one day, and she said, well, that's the famous words I've heard so many times in real estate. That's the way you do it. That's the way it's always been done. And I said, I really, that doesn't feel authentic to me. I really don't want to do that. Is there another thing is there another way for me to get the support that I need other than hiring and building out this team? And she said, well, if you don't want to build it yourself, I guess then you could join a team. And by the way, this is over a decade ago now. So teams were still in their early iterations. Teams were really just like a bunch of people connected by one person's credit card. They were not what they are and can be today. They were still learning. And so I looked out around in the market I was in at the teams that were sort of starting and figuring it out. And I said, no, I don't really want to do that either. And I said, well, if I don't want to build it myself and I don't want to join a team, what are my options? She smiled at me and she said, then you just stay where you are. And as someone who was a very hard worker and very growth oriented, I thought to myself, that's a slow death. I can't just stay where I am. So truth be told, Brian, I kind of fought success for a while because the only option I felt like I had was to build a team, but that never felt right to me. I really never wanted to do that. And so I failed forward through that for a while until eventually I took a position as the CEO of what at the time was the largest real estate brokerage in California. And when I got there, I realized that this challenge that I had had as an individual agent wasn't unique to me. In fact, every individual agent that would come in for coaching and to converse with me was really in the same position that I was, which was they really didn't want to build it out themselves. And they didn't want to join a team. And if they didn't do either of those things, they were left with, well, then I guess you just stay where you are. And on the other side, as a brokerage leader, I felt for them as someone who had been in their position not too long ago. But on the other side, as a brokerage leader, that became one of my biggest challenges, right? That was like my biggest revolving door, the biggest time challenge I had, the people that required the most support. And so I looked up one day and just said, why are we fighting this group of people and why are we fighting success so hard? There's got to be a better way. Like somebody has got to offer this group of people a better way. And I'll never forget, Brian, I was sitting in a mastermind with brokerage leaders with a group of, I'll call them the powers that be in real estate at the time. And I said, we were talking about this group of people, this group of individual agents who everybody was frankly having challenges with. And I said what at the time felt like the most obvious but stupid question. And we were all trying to figure out how to better support them. I said, has anybody just asked? Like, has anybody just asked them what they're looking for or what they need? And I'll never forget, Brian, this guy leans across the table and he looks at me and he goes, Nikki, if Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I leaned back over and I said, but they would have said faster. See, we don't know how to articulate that which we haven't seen before. They wouldn't have asked for cars because they never saw them, but they would have said faster. And so in other words, what people are willing to articulate to you is what solves their problem and what would make their life better, but they can't always tell you the vehicle through which they want to get it. That is for you to figure out as the person who's willing or who is looking for the answer. And so agents were saying, why can't we have all the economies of scale, all the support, all the benefits, all the infrastructure of having a team around us, but we don't want to build it ourselves and take on the overhead and complexity, but we also don't want to have a joint team. Why can't we have that? And the industry just kept saying, no, that's not possible. That's not possible. You can't have all of that. And I said to myself, why not? Why can't we give that to them? And I realized that we can't hope to solve the same problems that we've had with the same thinking that created them. And we kept thinking that it was either this path or this path for individual agents. And I finally looked up and said, there's another path. We just have to figure out how to be able to give it to them. And so I created a comprehensive support system exclusively and specifically designed for individual real estate agents. And the big differentiator for what we do is that I always tell individual agents, there's tons of tools out there that you can use yourself, but having a good set of tools doesn't actually solve the problem that needs solving, because it's still up to you to use them, to figure them out, to do them. What individuals actually needed was a comprehensive support system to do the things for them they need to be done in the business so that they can focus on what matters most and so that they can scale effectively, as if they had a team around them or as if they had joined a team, without having to take on the risk of overhead, which most agents never want to do, and without having to give up their brand in the process. And so we created a do-it-for-you model, a comprehensive support system for the entire business, where we support them in what I call the big five: coaching and training, database management, marketing, transaction management, and supplemental lead generation. I launched that company in January of 2021. Had a lot of people told me I was crazy, that it was the wrong market, that it was the wrong group of people, that it was a bad business model, that it wasn't a good idea, that people who innovate in real estate don't look like me, which at the time, as an under 30 self-funded female, I was certainly not of the majority trying to create waves in real estate. And it turns out that it was that people just hadn't asked the right question and really listened to the answer, because it turns out that's exactly what a lot of individual agents needed. And we grew that, and in March of 2024, Ojo and Mavoto came to me and said, well, what would it look like for us to launch this together, for us to give you more direct access to this group of leads, wherein we know our biggest challenge is that we want people who can convert these at a higher level, who will actually follow up, who have the support that they need in order to do that. And why don't we join forces in order to go help even more individual agents across the country and across different business models? And that's exactly what we did. So I sold it to them in March of 2024. And since then, we've grown substantially and are continuing to help more and more individual agents achieve astronomical growth in their business. And that brings us to today. How'd I do, Brian?
It's great. This is great. And what an amazing story too. And so you and I were talking, because we have a partnership with you now, right? For real estate agents who need the kind of support that you're talking about, don't want to start a team, don't want to join a team, they can still get that. And so we're delighted to be in partnership with you. You and I were talking though, and what struck me is you kind of are a large team to a certain degree, right? Because what you do for agents is help them with their database. One of the things you do for agents is help them with their database. A lot of other things that you provide as well. And so we were talking about this lead generation project, and I thought, well, okay, this is somebody who obviously works at a large scale through databases, probably has a lot of wisdom to share with real estate agents. So I'm curious, from a database sphere of influence perspective, there's probably a lot to this question. What is it that you see that agents are so challenged by, and what's the right solution for them? What should they be doing? And some will, some won't, and the ones that won't may come to you. But start there. What is it that we need to learn from your experience and what you guys have put together?
Yeah, this is a great question. And you're right that this is a multifaceted answer, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit more granular as we go. But I would say the broadest thing that I could name, Brian, is so many people are looking for the perfect plan, and they will pontificate on the best touches to send out and the best database to use and the best approach to it, all the while never actually doing it. And so the biggest challenge that I see for a lot of individual agents is that they spend so much time trying to come up with the perfect plan that they never actually execute on anything. And I always tell people you find the right path forward by implementing the imperfect plan. And so my best advice to any individual agent, whether they were to join us or try to do it on their own, you have to begin. You cannot find a better path forward until you begin. I always tell people effort sets your floor, strategy sets your ceiling. Yes, there is probably a better strategy for you to go about converting your database. And I'm happy to talk specifically about that here. But until you begin, it doesn't matter. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't implement it, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to get anything about your database and get anything out of your database. And I hear people all the time give me some version of I'm getting ready to get ready, right? Like, oh, I plan this year to perfect my database, or this is the year, Brian. I'm on my 10th year in real estate, but this is the year I'm going to get that database in order. I'm like, no, you're not. If you haven't done it yet, you just aren't going to do it. So the number one question I get asked, especially because we manage so many databases, we have 50 different databases that we'll support. But so many people are like, which one of those is the best one? I'm like, the one you use. That's it. I don't care if it's a spreadsheet. I don't care which database it is. Like, the one you use is the best one so long as you will use it. Sure, once you start using it, there are some that I like better than others that I think create more opportunity than others, several which, EXP is in partnership with. But like, the one you use is the best one. And until you can master that, I can't hope to give you a better strategy.
Yeah, I would say hit the ceiling of limitations of whatever database software, then come ask that question. And
Yes.
until you do, Lofty, Chime, and KV Core and FUB if you're a team, all of those are great databases. Just use
Yeah.
one.
They will
So,
do everything you
so
need them to do.
yeah, it's funny you say this. So I was just talking to a top agent who's friend and was chastising this top agent who shall remain nameless because they are amazing. I mean, they are doing like double-digit millions in volume annually for years and years and years. No database, no database,
Oh,
and would readily admit it to me. I'm probably leaving millions in GCI on the table, and I'm like, no, you're not leaving millions. You're leaving tens of millions in GCI on the table,
totally.
and also making your life harder because you're constantly in the hunt, the treadmill
Well,
of lead generation, as opposed to working a database.
yes, Brian, that's it. That's what I tell individual agents. I'm like, the reason this feels like such a grind for you is because it is, because you don't implement any system that allows it for it to be easier for you. That's the
Yeah.
biggest mistake that I see is that most agents are working so much harder than they need to be if they were to just get their database in order.
So I'm curious because I wonder if there's an easy way to do that. Like for a lot of agents, the thought process as to why, or maybe the excuse as to why they haven't built their database yet is because I got to sit down, I got to clear my schedule, and I really got to like focus, right? First, I'm going to have to do all the research and the legwork of figuring out which database to use. Okay, we just talked about that. But is there an easy way that you found to teach agents about how to just go about building that database while you're in the chaos that is being a real estate agent, a successful one?
Yeah, the tons of ways, but I'll give you sort of my top two strategies that I were to give to anybody inside or outside of our organization who's an individual trying to go about not only because you said building, which is very important. And by the way, some people say like, oh, I'm in the process of building my database, to which I'll say, well, welcome to real estate. You will continue being in the process of building your database until you choose to stop doing real estate. That is always the job. You should never look at that database and say, I'm going to put the football down on this thing. I'm done. You're just not. You never are. Anybody who you meet with a pulse and an email or a phone number needs to go into that database. Every single person. So that's the first thing. It's everybody you come across, whether it's on your social media or you meet them at the grocery store or you met them actively prospecting, i.e. open houses or door knocking or whatever your chosen lead generation lever is, you need to get those people into your database because you will forget about them. You absolutely will. It's not if, it's when. And I always tell people you have to approach every day in your business as if it was day one. This is Jeff Bezos' principle. But if you read his shareholder letters, he's got this great concept that I love called this day one mentality, which is basically, in short, you approach your business as if it were day one every day. Well, what did you do in your real estate business on day one as it pertains to your database? Anybody who you knew ever in your life, you put them in your database. You were like, I'm going to get everybody in there. And by the way, there was only like 45 of them. And then every time you did anything prospect related, you would get them into your database because you just didn't have that many. But as we go faster and as we get busier, we tend to get lazier or less consistent as it pertains to that database. You can't do that. That is the most important thing that you could do so that you continuously follow up with everybody in there. And then you said something else, Brian, which I hear a lot, which is people are like, well, I got to get it cleaned up, or I just got to spend one day getting in front of everybody and seeing where they are. I'm like, you're never going to do that. By the way, like, good luck finding a day. You said it earlier, like, I've got 4 kids, I've got a big job, like, everybody has life. You're never going to find that one day. If you haven't found it yet, you're not going to find it. So here's what you can do. You can put out touches that I tell our agents all the time. We use a tagging system that relates to different types of communication, but none of the communication that we put out is so egregious that somebody would get it and say, Brian, how dare you send this to me? And that's never going to happen in your database if you send out the right touches. You can send out really gentle touches that are just question-based or inquiry-based or interest-based that invite people to start a conversation with you. And no matter whether you talked to them last week or 10 years ago, are perfectly appropriate for the person who's on the other side. So you don't need to get it perfect. By the way, you won't get it perfect. We support hundreds of databases nationwide and have a lot of experience, and I still don't think we've perfected it. We're always learning based off what we learn and the feedback that we get. So just start communicating with it in a way that gets people to respond, and you will learn as you go. And then make sure that you do that on a specific cadence moving forward.
Yeah, I like that very much. When we talk to agents, we teach the principle of immediate need versus future need, right? So you're going to be meeting people on a regular basis. Some of them will have immediate needs, not the majority by any means. The vast majority are going to be future need people, right? And so they need to be on an appropriate campaign. An immediate need person, I think about my old friend Ben Kenny and his 10 days of pain and that kind of strategy where, like, for the next few days, you're going to hear a lot from me multiple times a day across multiple channels. Future need people probably don't want to do that. That's not going to make sense. You're going to appear a little tone deaf and not reading the room that they're not ready to buy or sell today. They might have said that actually. And so having some sort of tailored campaign to them. And there's the division of the two, future and immediate need people. But then there is also too the idea that within those are going to be subsets of people.
Yeah.
People that you meet through your sports club, people that you meet through your kids' schools, people that you meet through your neighborhoods. And do you talk to them the same way? So here you are, a huge database owner, right? And how do you think about categorizing and then speaking to people accordingly in your database?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm similar to Ben in the sense that we have short term versus midterm versus long term. And here's what I mean by that. And here's how I bucket these people, right? We have short term, i.e., we know this is a hot lead. We met them in an open house and they said they're ready to buy. We got an online lead and they gave us all the buying signals and we scheduled an appointment. It's a referral from a friend who we know needs to buy because they're moving for their job, whatever it is. Like you know what a hot lead is. So to me, that's somebody who's ready to go, not just within the next 10 days, but probably within the next 90. And those go on what we call a hot sheet. And we actually don't add those to automated touch systems in the database because the assumption is that the agent is doing their part and their job, which is to convert the people who are ready to be converted right now, right? That's right now business. And it's not really appropriate to depend on a database to follow up with them because your conversations should be focused on setting the appointment, right? And a database just isn't going to do that well for you. I know we all want it to, but that's your job as the agent. Your job is to set the appointment and keep them moving forward. And then once they're out of that 90 days, so whether they convert or don't convert, then they move to the midterm bucket. And that's people that I know are trying to do something within the next 6 months to a year, i.e., I know I need to stay in front of them because, Brian, you've sold real estate, so you know if a buyer says to me, I want to buy in the next year, does that always mean that it's within the next year, or what does that actually mean?
Could be 3 months, could be a month. Yeah.
Exactly.
Depends.
Like it just depends. They're probably just giving me this generalized time frame because what it really says to me is I don't know enough, nobody's met with me, etc. Right? Same thing for a seller. I'm thinking about selling within the next year. Well, by the time someone's saying that to you, like they've actually probably got a pretty good idea in their head of when they would like for this to happen. They're just looking for you to give them a plan. But they still go into that midterm bucket, right? In other words, I need to be calling them, but I also need to have touch systems in place because I'm probably busy with my hot sheet and the business that I have. And then we have the long-term bucket. And in that bucket goes everybody that I meet. So if I met you, Brian, let's say our kiddos play soccer together, and I had a great conversation with you. You now know I'm in real estate. I'm going to ask you, hey, Brian, everybody I meet loves this thing that I send out that talks about what's happening in the market and what's going on in the neighborhood. Would you want in on that list? And by the way, what does everybody say to that? They're like, yeah, I'd love to get that. That sounds cool. And so I'm going to get your information and I'm going to add you to my database and you're in my long-term bucket. In other words, what that says is I haven't had enough conversations yet with Brian to know what Brian wants to do or if he's going to do anything, but I know that I need to stay in front of him because that's my job for anybody that I meet. I need Brian to think of me when he thinks of real estate. So I need to be communicating with him often enough, which is usually anywhere between 35 to 40 times a year in different capacities for him and associate me with real estate. Therefore, when real estate comes up, I am the person that he thinks of. And that's how I think about the different buckets and how we sort of cadence out the communication.
Okay. When you think about the different types from your perspective, having been an agent and now having this massive database. Excuse me. Sorry. Let me turn that off. So let me begin again. When you think about the different types of people you're going to meet out in the world, right? Geographically based, psychographically, demographically, whatever the case might be. For an agent who hasn't even built a database yet, are you going there first, or are we just trying to get them onto a plan and then we'll tailor from there?
Explain your question more. Like, am I just trying to go out to am I trying to just get my phone into my database, or am I trying to go meet new people? Is that what you're asking?
Well, so past that stage, once
Okay.
you got people that you need to get on a plan of some sort, do you recommend a more tailored approach for your drip? Meaning, hey, if you're gonna build your database, make sure you're tagging these people appropriately, and then build a separate plan for each major tag. Could be people in the Belterra neighborhood, could be people that I
Mm-hmm.
met at at my kids' sporting thing, right?
I see.
Whatever
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah. My short answer here isn't one everybody will like, but I find that complexity is going to be the enemy of you actually executing on this, especially in the database. So I find that when people get too intricate with their tags, they start overthinking like what they should send to everybody. But the truth is, the tags in for most agents should just be used to serve as a memory for where you met this person or in what sort of like communal bucket you might put them in. But my bet would be that all you need to do is create organized content for your short-term follow-up, which again, that's going to come from you, right? Your midterm follow-up and your long-term follow-up. That's probably the communication cadences that you need to have ready. And so sure, you can totally tag them with like soccer friend or volunteer person or kids parents friends or whatever it is, but you should also have a secondary tag which is short term, midterm, long term, i.e. which version of this communication do they get, because most agents aren't going to put out anything different or shouldn't put out anything different to their like soccer friends versus the people who they know through volunteering, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So most likely you don't need that many tags, but you do need to decide what you're going to send out to each of these timeline buckets and then build out that communication in advance so you don't have to think about it when it's ready to go out. Because if you think if you require that, if it's not done ahead of time, it's not going to do it. You're just not going to send it out.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about the medium and the long term then, right? And by the way, I agree with you about the short term from the standpoint of promotional marketing. That's not if you're going to use your database. Now, I actually do think you should use your database. It's more of an action plan, right? Call them
Yes.
today, send the email to
Yes.
them today, that kind of thing. Putting that into it, and especially if you're doing a system that has and you've asked for proper permission for email and texting, that has those automations in there, that's that kind of short term. But going to the medium and the long term, are these touches different in frequency? Are they different in content? Are they different in both?
Both, because somebody who's midterm, you're going to need to communicate a little bit more frequently. And somebody who's long term, you need to communicate frequently, but less frequently, right? So I would say long term, that's the bucket where you're looking at 35 to 40 touches a year. That's how often you need to be in front of them for them to think of you when they think of real estate. Midterm, i.e., somebody who's going to be moving forward in the next 6 months to a year, likely every week, but you have to change the path of communication. So what I mean by that is you can't all be on the same avenue, i.e., they can't all be email, they can't all be text, they can't all be call. So you need to break up how the communication is being received. Now, the people who are in the long-term bucket, the 35 to 40 group, that can all be the same, and that's okay. I would highly suggest that you are also reaching out to them. That's just going to increase your conversion rate. But if it's not, that's okay. But everybody else, it should be the once a week. Everybody's in that midterm bucket. Should be once a week, and you should be changing how you reach out to them. I.e., the way that we usually recommend is it's going to be this week is a text, next week is an email, the week after that is a call, the week after that's going to be a social media touch if you can do it, and if not, it's going to be another text. So you're changing the pathway through which you're communicating with them, so it doesn't always feel like it's just sort of a canned and bagged script that they're getting.
Okay. Do you have any advice for agents who have kind of partial or incomplete contact? Like I might have somebody's phone number, but not their email, or maybe one or the two of both of those and not their social media handle. How do we make sure that we've got a more complete database?
You ask. I think that's what everybody misses. You ask. Like one of the first things that we have our agents do, because that's what they say to us when they come in. They say, we've got a great touch that goes out that helps them with this. But for those agents who say like, man, I haven't communicated with my database in like 3 years, or I've got all this incomplete contact. How do I get it all complete again? I'm like, well, here's the script. Hey, Brian, it's Nikki Miller. If I know where we met, awesome. If I don't know where we met, awesome. Doesn't really matter. We haven't talked in a while. Last time we talked, you were thinking about doing something real estate related. And Brian, I'm so sorry. It's absolutely my bad. I've lost touch. Did you ever hit your real estate goal that you had? By the way, I'm saying it like that because I don't know what it was. I don't remember. I'm assuming I'm like most agents and I haven't kept track of anything. Brian, did you ever achieve that real estate goal that you had?
You know what? We decided to wait and blah, blah, blah.
You decided to wait. So when I say decided to wait, then I'm just going to probably ask a couple more questions to remember, was he a seller? Was he a buyer? Like, how did I meet Brian? And I would say, hey, Brian, once a year, I'd like to make sure I make this conversation as valuable as it could be moving forward to you. And I've got your phone number clearly here on file, but what's the best email for you, Brian? And you're going to give it to me, whatever it is. And hey, Brian, is it all right? I love getting to know our people and whatever they're into on social media. So whether you're into woodworking or into, sharing about your kids winning their soccer games, what's the best social media handle for you? By the way, it's so rare that our agents ever come back to us and say they wouldn't give it to me. People always give it because people like to be connected. And then you have to go and follow them and stay connected to them. And that gives you another place that you can have a touch with them. So literally just ask.
That's great. So once I've got this sort of multi-channel opportunity, you said 35, 40 emails a year if they're going to be long-term, with some personal touches in there. The midterm really is more about mixing up these various channels and making sure that we're communicating across them. What's the content need to be in order to be valuable? Because I think a lot of people hesitate because they don't want to spam people and they don't want to be seen as annoying by calling them. And so what's the value that I can bring as a real estate agent? Can you give me some examples of either emails or phone call scripts or posts that you've seen that really bring value and allow the agent to kind of shine instead of being sleazy and annoying?
I'm going to give you our top 3 best performing touches, Brian. So hopefully everybody goes out and uses these. Number 1 is, what can I help with? That's the subject line. What can I help with? ? And the content of the email looks a little something like this. Make it your own. But it basically says, hey, Brian, I am working with so many of my clients in the area, and they're asking me about the best painters and contractors and vendors. And Brian, I'm so sorry. I realize I've never offered this to you. Do you need anybody right now in support for your home? Could it be blah, 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 whatever it might be? I know all the best people in the area. Consider me your own personal Yelp. Who can I help you connect to? By the way, one of our best performing, because if somebody's looking for a bunch of contractors, what's probably going on with their house, or what do they think? It opens up a conversation. So not only do you get to be of value, which is really what you need to think about when you come to database touches, how can I be of value to this person? And everybody loves the person who has a person for all the things, and allows you to open it up for questions. If they're doing a bunch of housework, what are you thinking? What are you doing? When you're done with all this housework, do you want to get a home valuation so you know what updates actually brought you additional equity into your home, or additional value into your home? So you get to open up a conversation. That's number one of our best performing ones. The second one is is this valuable? Subject line. Those are for the people who like a little bit more of a gentle touch. For those that are a little bit more spicy like me, I like a subject line that says, "Am I annoying you?" Question mark. Gives a much higher open rate, but we give our agents the choice. We want it to be their voice, right? So I like, "Am I annoying you?" And then the subject, or excuse me, the body of the email is, "Hey, Brian, I want to make sure that I'm actually giving you things that are valuable to you as it relates to the real estate market. You've seen that I send updates on what's happening in the industry, updates on what's happening in terms of prices in the market, updates on what's happening in the community. Is there anything I'm not sending that would be valuable, or anything I'm sending too much of that you would like me to pull back on?" Again, opens up a conversation. If somebody says, "I want more info on the real estate market," guess what they're probably thinking about doing soon, right? So this allows you to create a conversation. This is how we create a lot of conversations for our agents. And then the last one, this is for people who are on your hot list or on your midterm list. This is not appropriate for those who are on your long-term list, okay? So
Okay.
short-term list or midterm list. This is for somebody who has ghosted you. I stole this from Chris Voss and have used it. It's one of my favorite scripts that you all could use. I use it in the context of real estate all the time. So if somebody has Never Split the Difference is the book, by the way. Every single person who is in any type of job that requires communication should read that. So everybody. But
Great book.
anyway, so great book. So if somebody has ghosted you, i.e., and by the way, let me qualify ghosted, because sometimes people like wield this a little bit too soon. Ghosted
Yeah.
is like, I was in regular communication with them for a couple days, couple weeks, and then they've gone radio silent for at least a few weeks. Like I was in regular communication, and then they just disappeared. I absolutely have tried to get a hold of them, and I cannot. Not for a day, don't be weird, but like for weeks, right? They've actually ghosted you. Then the script is, "Have you given up?" Question mark, and that is all you are allowed to send. So I like to send it via text. I send it to a lot of my friends via text. If like they don't answer my text messages, they know what I'm doing at this point, right? But when you send it to a prospect, I've got almost a 100% response rate to this. "Have you given up?" Question mark. So you're going to get one of a couple responses. Number one, they're going to be like, "Pound sand. Great. At least I got you to respond to me. I know where you're at." Or number two, "Oh, Nikki, I'm so sorry. I haven't given up. I've just been busy, blah, blah, blah." I don't care why. I just want you to talk to me, right? I just want to get back in front of you. Or it'll be something of like, "Yeah, I have given up. I actually decided not to do X, Y, and Z." Great. Now I know. Now I get to put you in my long-term bucket. Or "No, I haven't given up. I decided to go with somebody else." Or, "What are you talking about?" No matter what, it's just creating the conversation for you. So those are some of we've got a bunch. I could go on for this about days, but those are some of our most effective that our agents get the best return on.
What's interesting is what I didn't hear you say is the most effective. And again, this is metro-sized, data, right? What I didn't hear you say is, "I'm the greatest realtor in the world and I can sell your house too." I didn't hear you say, "Hey, curious what your home's worth." I didn't hear you say, "Get the hottest listings off market and blah, 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 blah." What's interesting about, and you even did say this, you said, "I'm trying to create conversation." And
Yeah.
that, isn't that interesting?
Well, I'm trying
Instead
to
of,
get you to respond. I just want to talk to you, right? Not talk at you. Those are different.
yeah, interaction and engagement. So that's interesting. Okay, great. And when you think about duration, because I know this is where a lot of agents fall, right? They start something very earnestly. But as they say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And so somewhere along the way, they fall off, they stop, they don't continue it. From your experience, you talk about medium, midterm to long term, right? This is assuming you've had some conversation with them at some point and that you understand their needs. What should I be looking at for duration, especially in the long term, right? Midterm, we've already said they 6 month or less need time frame, and we're trying to work them. So long term, what should I expect in terms of how long I'm going to have to stay on somebody before they're going to convert to any sort of available client?
Well, how long do you intend to be in real estate? That's really the
Hopefully,
answer.
quite a while. Hopefully,
There you go. Then
23 years
that's
and counting so far. So
right.
yeah,
So that's the same thing. If somebody asks me, I mean, I'm still in contact with people that I door knocked my first day in real estate over 14 years ago now, right? Like that's how long. Because I don't know about all of you, but I didn't move that many times when I was young. So if people were trying to stay in front of my parents, they would have been in front of them for 15 years before they actually made a move.
yeah,
So the question isn't how long do I stay in front of them? The question is how long do you intend to be in business? And if the answer is like you and I both, I'll be in this business as long as it'll have me, right? So I'm going to be communicating with those people as long as this business will have me, which looks hopefully a lot like forever.
yeah. Well, can you give me a sense of like if I wanted to get X out of my database this year in terms of deals, right? Active clients
Yeah.
that then convert into closed sales. How many people am I going to have in my database working on some sort of plan long term for me to expect to get one deal, and then we can multiply from there times how
Yeah.
many deals we want to get. So you've got a huge database. I'm sure you got a lot of data on this. What's a
Yes.
good expectation, and maybe talking about like the kind of good, great, awesome kind of conversion rates that you see out there.
Great question. So the let me qualify, like let me give everybody some context before I start getting into numbers, so we don't get overly excited and say, well, Nikki told me it would work like this. When we talk about conversion rates, what I'm usually looking at is over the course of 6 months to a year. Because if you
Okay.
start talking to a database today, you're not going to get results today. Real estate, unfortunately, just doesn't work that fast. I tell people often when they come in our organization, they're like 30 days in, they're like, well, my life in business hasn't changed. I'm like, yeah, it didn't take you 30 days to get here. It's not going to take me 30 days to get you out, right? So you got to give it enough time for it to actually work. So let's use a year because that's typically what we're pulling out is like enough time for touches to have been happening for us to actually get to a true conversion metric, right? So if somebody has a database, we give our agents what we call health scores in their database, i.e., like how many people that are in this database have full information, name, phone number, and email. And by the way, you might be saying, well, what about address? Also great, but I'm usually not sending things via mail. If that's what you're doing, great. But we're usually touching via phone or email. So that's what I'm actually looking at. So
Okay.
let me give context for all these conversions over a year and people who have health scores of 50% or more. And so what that means is that 50% of their people have all information or more. And so you have to have at least, typically the worst conversion rate that we will see is about 1%. So in other words, you have to have 1,000 people at full information in order to get 10 transactions out of it, right?
Okay.
Our more average conversion rate is 3 to 5% over the course of a year. So you can do that math. So depending upon how many deals you want to get, that's how many people you would need to have with full information in the database. And then our better conversion rate ranges like 6+%. Okay. So a lot of this has to do, go ahead.
Can I ask you? Sorry, I'm slow on the uptake sometimes, but when I get it, I get it. You said 50% or better. So if I have a database of 2,000, you're saying 50%, 1,000. I could expect, good-ish would be about 1%.
Correct.
Better-ish would be about 2 to 3%. Did you say?
You got it. You got it.
Okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha, gotcha.
So it's how many people have full information because a lot of agents come to me and say, "Oh, I've got 10,000 people in my database," And then if I actually ask them some questions and dig around, what they really have is like an 8,000 person list that they bought somewhere where it's just name and email or just name and phone number or just name and address. And only 2,000 of those actually have full information. So what I say to them is actually you have a 2,000 person database and you have 8,000 people that we might get lucky with. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's actually all we have. So really you've got a 2,000 person database. That is the number that I'm looking at. Now, a lot of this has to do with like, has the agent ever been in front of them? How long have they been communicating, et cetera. But within that 1 year, good. Our worst conversion rate's usually about 1%. Our mid-level conversion rate, more our average, is usually 3 to 5%, and then our best is 6+% is usually what we're looking at.
What is the delta? So full information, okay, but why would one convert at 6% or better and one convert at 1%?
The agent. That's almost always what it is. It's almost always the agent. In other words, we can only do so much. And I always laugh. Like one of the things that our agents constantly ask for is, can you just get an ISA to call my database? To which I'll say no, because then they are building the relationship with us, not with you. That is the point. The point is for them to build the relationship with you, not with your call team, not with your VA, not with your AI, like with you, the human being. No matter how much we want to avoid it, this is a human business wherein we like to work and interact with other humans. So you need to give them a human connection. It can't all be digital. Yes, that helps. It is designed to create conversations with you. But Brian, it is maddening to me how many examples I could give you of agents who we've sent out touches and they've gotten 100 email responses. And they'll come back to me and they'll mad, like truly angry at me and say, Nikki, I got 100 emails from people today, all wanting to talk to me. I'm like, yes, that's great. It's working. And they're actually mad about it. And they don't follow up or don't answer their questions or don't respond. And I'm like, oh no. Right? So much of it has to do, does the agent do their part? Do they answer the phone when it rings? Do they pick up the phone when they should? Do they respond to the emails or the texts when they get it? And if they can't do that, oh, Brian, there's not much I can do.
Yeah, there's not much I can do either. Um, so yeah, here you are, a massive database owner, and you built that one bit at a time, but also too, you built your systems one bit at a time. For somebody who's either an experienced agent, and by the way, this is really aimed at experienced agents, not new agents.
Yeah.
My experience is, and I was just telling my team this the other day, is when we're writing this training, you have to write not to the newbie who doesn't know what you're talking about. They all know this. They know this. They just don't do it. And part of that is overcoming their head trash, and part of it is getting them to actually start, right. Any final thoughts from you about whatever we didn't talk about in terms of building a database that an agent at that level, capper, icon level agent, really needs to kind of understand in order to be successful at this?
Just begin. Like, you have to begin. For you to build a better system, you have to start. For you to understand how to make it work better, you have to start. For you to understand which touches work the best for your particular database, you have to start. And if you say that you want to get 15 transactions out of your database, build the right math in order for you to get it. So for example, if you have 10 people in your database and you're thinking you're going to get 15 transactions out of that, you're not. You're absolutely not going to do that. You would need to have at least 1,500 people in your database that you are communicating with regularly. And by the way, if you say to me, I can't possibly think of 37 things to say a year or 30 or 40 things to say a year. Great. Start with 12 a year. Start with one a month. Do something. Anything that you do will be better than you not following up at all. It's okay if it's not perfect. By the way, I always tell people, like, we all think we know best. Otherwise, we would be fools to be doing it any differently. So just because you aren't doing it right now doesn't mean that you don't know what to do. Just try and see how your database responds. That's how we've built every great touch that we have. We put out A/B testing of touches or communication that we thought would get great responses or we thought would work, and then we see what happens. And then we make it better as we know better. And that is what you have to do on the scale of your business as well. So just begin, start communicating with people. And remember, if you don't know what to send, pick up the phone, and ask. People
Yeah.
might say faster horses, but you need to hear faster, i.e., I want to know more about what's going on in the market. Great. When you say that, Brian, does that mean that you want to know more about prices of your home? Do you want to know more about how mortgage rates are trending? And start a conversation with the person who's on the other side so that you can not only understand where they are right now, but also what they would like to see moving forward. And that will answer what you need to be sending out to your database.
Love that. All right, Nikki Miller, thank you so much for doing this for us. We really appreciate it. We hope that a lot of our agents can take advantage of the systems that you built there at Lever and really build their business. How can they get a hold of you?
Lever.moboto.com/exp. That's our home for all of our EXP friends. You'll get to hear more about what we do, inquire. You can find me on Instagram, Nikki Miller, and I respond to everything that comes through so we can stay connected there. And Nikki at leverbymoboto.com. I'm here to help this amazing group of people, and I hope that this was valuable. Thank you, Brian, so much for having me.
Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it.